the George Edgecombe Courthouse in Tampa, Florida. Basically, I got to file an appeal, so I'm serving my notice of appeal to opposing party and to the circuit court regarding attorney's fees.
What's up with all the attorney's fees? Why do you have attorney's fees that you're responsible for?
Well, according to the record, opposing counsel cited a case law called Rosen versus Rosen, and she alleges that I have been confusing the issues and delaying the judicial process. So based on that, even though there was no clear and compelling evidence to support that information, the judge awarded her attorney's fees. But what's real odd and weird about it is that the judge that awarded her the attorney's fees, he only had been on my case for 3 days. Just got transferred into the family unit division because there was a rotation with the judges back in March of 2005. And she filed an motion for a hearing for attorney's fees, which she could have piggybacked on our March 4th, 2005 hearing in front of the original judge, Judge Honeywell. But because Judge Honeywell didn't award her any attorney's fees from the initial part of the case, she knew her chances weren't too good since Judge Honeywell knew all her little ploys and deceitful actions. So when she got word that there was going to be a rotation in the judges, she tried to take advantage of the fact that this judge was not familiar with the case, and the fact that I'm a pro se litigant. He went with her, since she's supposed to be an officer of court and supposed to follow certain ethical and moral guidelines. He believed her over me. And I did bring up the point about the history of this case, but the judge had indicated that he wasn't interested in the history of the case, so I'm appealing that decision.
Tell us about the case. What's going on? What's really going on?
What's really going on, to nip it pretty much in the bud, is that opposing counsel is two strategies. One strategy is to alienate me from the kids, try to agitate me, harass me. Hopefully I'll give up or lose control, and giving them a reason to deny me access to my kids, but that hasn't happened. So now what they're trying to do is they're trying to financially strangle me into submission by continuously trying to focus on attorney's fees due to the fact that they know that I object to the fees. So every 3 to 4 weeks, we're in court addressing these attorney's fees. But what we're not addressing, and what needs to be the primary issue according to the law, is what's in the best interest of the kids and how I'm going to maintain my parent-child-like relationship with my sons. So we're not really talking about the visitation and the custody and the other important issues that the court really has to make a determination on. Really what we've been fighting for the last year are just attorney's fees. Well, I believe the way it got here is just due to the fact that there was a rotation in the court system back in March of 2005, because this case was already scheduled for final hearing back in May of 2005. But when the new judge took over, he continued it because he wasn't prepared to hear the case at that point in time. Since then, it's been continued 2 additional times. So, and what the Supreme Court of Florida deems a paternity case should be decided within 6 months. Currently, I'm at 39 months, almost 40 months old. And this is not a modification. This is still the initial proceedings.
So for those folks that aren't legally savvy, what does that mean? It's not a modification. This is just the initial hearing. What does all of that legal lingo mean? What does that mean in layman's terms?
Well, usually, I mean, if you have a dissolution of marriage or you have a lot of assets and things like that, then it can be a little bit more complicated. But because we weren't married and this is just a paternity issue, it's relatively simple. And usually these type of cases and actions are decided within 6 months to a year. And then that's what's considered your initial determination. Now, after your initial determination, if there's any kind of special or extenuating circumstances that calls for the courts to modify the initial ruling, then you can come back based on those circumstances and ask the court to modify it. But like I said, this is still the initial proceeding, so my question is, why is it taking so long for us to establish custody visitation? Because the child support issues has been decided. So really the only other issues remaining on the table are visitation and custody.
What you mean by paternity case?
Because by law definition, if I was married, then it would automatically be assumed if we were married that I was the father of the child. But because we weren't married, then as an unwed father, I have to petition the court to establish paternity in order for me to get my rights as a father.
So you don't just have rights as a father because you have children, or you are party to a woman getting pregnant and having children. You have to establish those rights by going through the courts.
If you're not married, that is correct.
If you're not married.
That is correct. So that's what I did. See, usually what happens, it's usually the woman that takes the man to court to establish paternity in unwed situations. But in this situation, because of the circumstances surrounding my case, an attempt to try to protect my children and to also have a relationship and to establish my rights, I'm the one who went to court and asked the courts to establish my rights as a father. Now, what I assumed, and correct on my part, was that when my children were born and I signed the birth certificate and the acknowledgement of paternity papers, I thought that in itself established my rights as a parent. But really all that did was made me financially obligated. It didn't give me any custodial or visitation rights or anything like that. It just made me financially obligated to support some kids that I may or may not have rights to, which seems a little bit weird to me. And if you're paying to support the children, then shouldn't you have some say-so or visitation of the kids that you're supporting? I mean, it only makes sense to me, but hey, I'm not a lawyer. What do I know? Another notice to come to court and attempt to collect more attorney's fees. We're still not addressing my issues of custody and visitation, so I've come to file my objection and to file my notice of appeal. All right, here we are. This is where they do all the intake and the processing and the filing. So I'm about to come here, file my paperwork, pay my fees for the appeals, and then move forward from there. So stay tuned. I mean, when you're dealing with family situations, it's emotional, so there's a little bit of anxiety there.
You feel like you're closer to the to resolution?
Man, I hope so. That's what I pray for every day, just to get this thing resolved. So, you know, just counting my blessings and taking the information and knowledge that I've gathered and taking it to the next level. I mean, that's what I'm forced to do. So if I want to maintain an integral part of my children's life, then this is the type of process and things that I'm going to have to go through to assure that I maintain that relationship with them today. To my objection for the hearing date, since the case is already ongoing, I'm just following the paperwork to make sure that it does get into the case file. Now, in regard to my notice of appeal, there are some fees associated with the appeal process, so that's going to be the next step. So first, I'm just entering my objection to the hearing into the case file, and then we'll go ahead and proceed with the appeal process. And I just had to stamp my copies so they know when it was entered into the case file. So it's $150 to the lower court and $300 to the appeals. So I'm cutting 2 checks.
Well, non-final order is 50 plus copy check.
Not what? 50?
Final order.
Okay. I stand corrected. Since this is a non-final order appeals, then it's only $50 as opposed to $150. $150 is for final order appeals. So I saved $100 today.
Sounds like a Geico commercial.
Say that $100 for that child support payment. I'd rather they get it than have to do this. went and filed the appeal, paid all the necessary fees and costs. We went upstairs and delivered the notice of appeal and my objection to the hearing for October 25th in the judge's mailbox. Now we're going to opposing counsel's law office to drop off her copies of the notice of appeal and objection to the hearing for October 25th. So, follow along. All right, well, here we are. We've arrived at opposing counsel's law office. We're now going to deliver her notice of appeal and my objection to the hearing scheduled for October 25th. So, let's go inside.